Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Creative Studio Insider podcast. Now, this podcast is going to be one of a little bit of a difference. In the past, we've generally spoken to studio managers and people that work more on the technical and production side. Whereas this time, I really wanted to bring a spotlight to a gentleman that I spoke to recently around the notion of mindfulness and creativity. So this week, I'm chatting to Christopher Phillips, who's an award-winning creative director, senior graphic designer. He's worked both locally and internationally for some really well-known companies. He still is involved in the creative world nowadays, but he also does a lot of work on workshops that incorporate mindfulness and creativity. And I felt that that was a really fascinating topic to talk about. Christopher, thank you for your time this morning.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So I guess as a good starting point, how did you personally come to, I go to say the word discover, but we know that's not right. More in the sense, how did you come to have your first experience with mindfulness?
Well, it happened about maybe 12 years ago. Came about through illness, actually. I was traveling in South America in Bolivia, and I picked up something called meningococcal,
Hmm.
which is like a bacteria that affects your meningeal, which is like the lining of your brain. And when I got back from that trip, I was experiencing kind of almost like malaria symptoms where I was getting fevers and I was really struggling to concentrate at all. Like I was struggling to read books, read emails, just have conversations with people. Like my ability to focus was, you know, down by about 80% basically. Didn't, yeah, just struggling with energy levels and my ability to focus. I went and saw lots of doctors and tropical diseases specialists, and they pretty much put me through every drug you could take to try and knock it out. And after about a year and a half, I was still getting this reoccurring problem. So someone suggested I go and see an Ayurvedic doctor, which I didn't know anything about at the time. He was a GP and an Ayurvedic doctor. And yeah, he told me, like, introduced me to the concept of doshas and what my dosha was, and the fact that I was really out of balance in pitta, and this concept that instead of like, as in Western medicine, you basically try and block the symptoms of what's going on, and this Ayurvedic medicine was more looking at how you could enhance your own immune system.
Hmm.
So yeah, he he took me through a process of basically changing my diet, because I was pitta. I had a lot of fire in my system, and with that fire comes a certain intensity, which I thought that concept of, you know, what you eat and what you do, like the fact that it's a physical and a psychological thing. Um, yeah, so I started taking fire out of my lifestyle basically. So not eating hot foods, hot spicy foods, not going out in the midday sun, and trying to do things less intensely. And one of the things he also suggested was um, to take up a meditation practice, because that would kind of have a cooling effect on my mind and my body. And I'd done some meditation before, but I'd always struggled with it. And at that point, because of also meningococcal was causing a heat in my body as well, whenever I sat down to meditate, it was like sitting in boiling oil. I was just very uncomfortable, very agitated. And you know, before the buzzer would go each time, I'd already be standing up doing my next list of tasks. But as I slowly, like, actually it wasn't slowly, it was like in 2 weeks of eating the foods that he suggested and drinking these cooling teas and going to bed earlier and getting up earlier, and a number of other things that just kind of took the heat out of my system. Yeah, I find I could sit there and meditate for just short periods, like under 10 minutes. And even that was quite difficult for me at the time, I remember. So I tried something called binaural beats, which were just like a very soothing meditative track that you would put on for 20 minutes, and you would lie down and you would kind of half fall asleep. And I mean, most people know what it probably is, but it's like they put one frequency in one ear and another frequency in the other ear, and your brain kind of
Creates an auditory illusion. That's a third
exactly,
frequency.
yeah. And that really kind of took me down. It kind of stepped me down to a point that when I started meditating again, in very quickly I could meditate up to like 40 minutes in a session, and that was probably about in a month. And I started feeling some that was extreme change was happening inside me, like because I'd been such a busy person, and I think I didn't even realize how much noise was going on in my head and how much tension was held in my body. I just started having everything seemed a lot easier. And when it came to at that point, I was doing quite a lot of photography. My photography process just started becoming a lot more enjoyable. There was like a tension between doing things and achieving things and not actually being present in that process. And as that slowly relaxed, a lot of joy was coming out of things that weren't very joyful at that time. I mean, when I first started doing photography, I was obsessed with it. But by that point, I built up some bigger clients, and I was, taking photos of celebrities, and those days on the site were just, full of anxiety and tension and not a lot of fun in the creative process. But one of the things the Ayurvedic guy also did was to take coffee out of my system. He was like, you should just not be, if you're going to drink coffee, just drink minimal amounts of it. So I actually pulled out the coffee altogether, like caffeine altogether. And instead of taking coffee breaks, I would just slip away and do, even if it was like 5 minutes of kind of like awareness, breath awareness, or some type of sensory awareness practice. And I noticed very quickly that, my energy levels were much higher. My kind of flexibility in the moment was just so much greater. I had so much room for just more creative angles of what I was thinking about doing. Like the possibilities became, there was just so much more space in what I was doing. And I'd get to the end of the day and I'd actually, have more energy than when I started. And I was like, wow, this is like quite a mind shift from where I'd come from. By that stage, a lot of my Ayurvedic, a lot of the meningococcal symptoms had totally dissipated. And this is after, like 2 years of seeking, medical help very regularly. And I started kind of falling in love with my creative practice again. Like instead of bringing stress to me, it was like really soothing me. And I noticed that I was just going out and spending more time just going to the local park and setting myself little projects to photograph things, or driving down to the national park and spending the whole day shooting. And I would split the day up into lots of little sections of meditating in between. And that just kind of, just breathed spaciousness into everything that I was doing. And it was really interesting how I'd feel after like a day in the national park or just an hour in the local park. And I started doing a bit of research into, some of the neuroscience behind spending time in nature, and found a whole lot of scientific papers about.
A lot of research around that, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really know much about it, but it was clear to me, it really does bring, your system down quickly. And it brings what they were talking about, soft focus instead of like very sharp focus. You're more kind of aware of things going on rather than just, little highlights of like, when you're in a city, your brain's jumping between, okay, how could I get hurt when I cross the road? Okay, there's the lights. Okay, what's that noise? Whereas when you're walking through nature, your awareness is softer and it's more like almost like spaced out around the periphery.
Yeah, I was about to ask, are you talking about peripheral vision there? And that,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I am, but it's yeah. Um, and then, by this stage, I was obviously raving to my friends about what meditation was, and why they weren't doing it like a fanatic. I was like, it's amazing, you should try it. And everyone was obviously supportive and happy that I'd found something that was good for me, but no one really was all that into it. And I thought, yeah, I just started thinking that like everyone should be trying this stuff because it does not only improve your well-being. Like I was feeling this lovely kind of like smooth feeling in my body as well. Like I'd get up and meditate in the morning, and then I was so aware of all my sensations. Just like pouring a cup of tea was like a real pleasure. There was a real pleasure to very simple things.
mm,
And the fact that my work was getting so much better as well, like I could clearly see that, my work was getting more creative, and I had more patience of just being able to fine tune everything that I was doing. Like everything was more refined. So yeah, I wrote this course, which I called meditative photography, where I combined being in nature, meditating, as well as learning specific aspects of photography. And I put those together. I rented out a little space in the Royal Botanic Gardens, and yeah, just took people through kind of 3 short meditation sessions interspersed with 3 practical things that would teach them a little bit more about a specific area of photography. And people love them straight away. I think, the basis of, a lot of people come to meditation through suffering, I
mm,
think. And, I came through suffering as well, I was very kind of unwell. But I think coming at it from the other angle of like, I want to improve my photography. And it's obviously quite logical if you can be patient and present with whatever's going on around you and have heighten your awareness, your photography is going to get substantially better quicker. And then I was approached by the School of Life, who specialize in emotional intelligence, like improving your
and
emotional
Elaine de
intelligence.
Botton. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And they said they would love to run the course. And yeah, as soon as I was given access to their database, I sold out all the courses and yeah, got rave reviews from people. I think it was interesting that, people from long-term meditators in their 60s who have been photographers their whole life were coming, and I was getting 19-year-old girls with anxiety and eating disorders coming along with their mobile phone. And yeah, it was amazing to talk to these people at the end of the session, because like me, a lot of them are too tense and couldn't get into a seated meditation, and we're finding that really difficult. But the process went for 3 hours, and I didn't want people to really talk too much, so I kind of framed the thing that try not to talk at all, and you can chat at the end. So not many people have been in that kind of meditative state for 3 hours, and I think being in nature definitely heightened that. And you could tell straight away that people were kind of happy with their results of what was going on as well. A lot of the things that I had felt through my practice were clearly being felt through one session. So yeah, those courses went really well. But after about a year, the School of Life decided that they were just going to run courses that they had created themselves rather than outsourcing the thing. So I stopped doing those courses. But yeah, I could talk a lot more about this.
I will jump in here and say, I absolutely love the concept that you came up with, because I think when people think about mindfulness, quite often there is perhaps in many cases they've tried it, but because they found it really challenging to do, they didn't maintain any practice. And it's not uncommon for me when I'm working with people around mindfulness that they might say something like, I tried it, but I found that the thoughts just came too often. And
Yeah.
I kind of say, well, yes, that's kind of the point of this, is about choosing which distraction you're going to be distracted by. Are you going to be
Yeah.
distracted by the racing thoughts and the monkey mind chatter, or are you going to be choosing which distraction you focus? And what I love about what you're put together is that it really is a very practical but beautifully creative way to be able to do that, to say, well, are we going to be distracted by the thought, or are we going to choose the focus quite literally of what we're going to be taking a picture of or engaging in? I
Yeah.
just think that's brilliant.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, for me as well, like I found it very challenging, like most people, to sit down and, you know, meditate. And I think there's a bigger, it fits into a bigger picture of um, full body health, really. Like when I think about the things that I've done to refine my consciousness, meditation plays a big role, but there are lots of other things that I've refined as well that have played, you know, almost equally as large a role, which is my quality of sleep has been a massive thing. I think diet, as I was talking about Ayurvedic, or, you know, a lot of people have got allergies to certain types of foods and they don't really know it. And so that actually has a massive impact to the state of your consciousness. So whether it's eating the right Ayurvedic diet or going to get tested on, you know, which things are actually affecting your food, like if you're gluten intolerant and you start eating gluten, your consciousness drops like right away, and being able to be mindful or meditate is very difficult. I think, um, yeah, like setting an intention, I think that comes with the meditation practice is a very powerful thing as well. Um, you know, the fact that you sit down to meditate for a little while and you practice in that moment to sharpen something, and then you afterwards you experience something, you experience your consciousness quite differently. And I think it's both the meditative practice and the intention behind what you're doing, setting your focus to go, okay, I've just meditated. Now, can I be more aware with that, you know, with that kind of energy that I've cultivated? Um, yeah, and other simple things about, you know, just being a healthy human being, like what are you doing exercises? Are you doing any type of movement like yoga or anything that kind of puts you back in your body? I think that's a very important thing to be aware of. But I think, yeah, like framing things has been a big part of it. I mean, I've been working in design agencies for like 22 years now. And, you know, it's such an intense environment. There's a lot of, in most of the places I've worked, you know, the politics, the tension over the work, you know, your own, whether you're actually growing, you know, that balance between kind of, what would you say, kind of stress and growth. I mean, what you're trying to pick up and whether you're seeing any markable change in your skills or in the quality of work, like it is difficult to see those things. I think in agencies, like you're jumping on such different jobs, you're only taking certain parts of certain jobs, and it's difficult to get that. After
Even within the creative industry, I know there, you know, I use the term imposter syndrome. In some cases
yeah,
it might be, but in other cases it might be overused. But I do certainly see that there are a lot of people who over time may begin to wonder if they are still good enough as a creative, or if
yeah,
they still have that conceptual ability, and may not necessarily recognize the role that their own thinking is playing in keeping them small, or having
yeah,
them procrastinate, or preventing them from being able to um, be as creative as they could be.
yeah, yeah. I definitely believe that. Like in one of the places I've worked, the boss would keep saying this mantra that you're only as good as your last job, which just undermines a whole professional career.
It's an interesting belief to put out there, isn't it? And you tend to wonder what's the proof that supports that.
Well,
It's a
to me,
statement.
that's a major manipulation.
Yeah,
I did just say, that's a statement said by employers to employees just to make them feel uncomfortable and keep them hustled. Um, and when it comes to working in good places, the more relaxed someone is, the smarter they are. Like the tests out that if you can create an atmosphere in which people are comfortable, their IQ can go up as much as 90%. So this idea that you've got to keep your foot on top of someone's head to get maximum results, I think is,
even just in terms of maximum results and productivity, cultivating an environment where people feel that they can, that they're capable, that they have the ability to bring who they authentically are into the workplace and to deliver on that is going to produce far better quality work, far greater results than beating people down with a stick and focusing on the cart and applying your own limitations to them. It makes me wonder why businesses want to operate in that way, because surely the quality of the work that's being produced is going to end up being substandard to those other studios that perhaps have embraced a different approach.
Yeah, I think it always comes down to the level of consciousness of the person in charge. If they're intimidated by other people, then they will try and keep the lid on everyone around them. So
there is the old saying that the fish rots from the head down. And that does tend to be, in my experience, quite true. And I guess in those situations, people just need to be mindful of the fact that while they might be part of this metaphoric fish, they don't have to be whatever it is that's trying to be imposed upon them.
Yeah.
In your experience, how difficult would it be for a studio to incorporate some form of mindfulness practice to assist their team?
Yeah, I think it's very easy. I don't believe in the practice of like forcing everyone to do something, because
no, I don't either. Yeah.
Because I have seen, if you've pushed a lot of stuff down for a long time and you start to open it up in the office environment, which is not necessarily a safe space, you can really see cracks appearing in people pretty quickly. I've put, I've offered meditation in the mornings and yoga practices in a couple of the places that I've worked, and yeah, people really love it. Like they really soak it up. I mean, the empathy between people, like if, there's always boundaries between people, but I feel like once you meditate, a lot of that hardness softens off a bit, and people, they really open up to each other. Like I noticed in a lot of places, like when people first learn to meditate, when they first get into a meditative state, they just fall asleep really quickly. And it's more the reflection of the fact that their body is exhausted and they just need to sleep. And that's like a really positive thing. And people are like, oh, I can't do this. I just keep falling asleep. And I was like, well, you're falling asleep. It's because your body has found that it needs the rest, and you get deeper rest in meditation than you do when you're asleep. So don't feel bad about it. Just feel good about the fact that you're replenishing, and over the weeks, if you keep it up, you'll find that you'll stop falling asleep and you'll just sit there in a very kind of meditative state. But yeah, the energy levels as well in the workplace I found went up a lot, and definitely creativity. People feel when there's more space in your head, you can turn easier and see things from different perspectives. And yeah, I mean, it definitely adds a lot to a creative practice that I've seen. Maybe I'm biased because it's had such a positive impact on my creative goals. Basically, anything that I've put it onto, like everything in your life gets better if you add more attention to it. It's it's clear and simple as that. So if you love, painting, taking photos, designing things, and you amplify your consciousness around those things, it becomes a lot more fun. And yeah,
I've often said what you focus on is the reality you get.
Yeah.
And, whether it's the what is it, the reticular activating system
I don't
that's within the
know.
brain that tends to focus on things, or just where you're putting your consciousness. It does either make your day a hell of a lot better or a hell of a lot worse, whichever way you wish to focus on it.
Yeah, yeah, just simple little things like setting yourself kind of achievable goals and celebrating very small achievements over the day, I think is a big thing as well. Like it's part of being mindful, like framing things in mindful ways. Like I don't know if you've read the book Flow. It's the
Yes.
original. Yeah. I mean that I just love that book. And it's all about setting up, that balance of kind of you want to achieve something, but you've got to get enough feedback and it can't be too stressful. And just, that adds a lot to everything that I do. No matter how small it is. That was one good thing from my last employer. He was really good at, like, you would see him doing the most mundane tasks, and then you see him just go yes, and I'll be like, what are you doing? You're like, I don't know, doing the most boring typesetting job, and he was like, yeah, but look what I've just, like, he's achieved some level of perfection on the thing, and it was really motivating to be around him and watch him do that. Like,
That's brilliant. Yeah, that is really good.
the energy that you can bring to some pretty crap tasks just amplifies everything that you do. Yeah, so I mean, moving on, the next course that I'm working on, I wanted to like the photography one works so well, but I wanted to create more of a framework around all creative practices and how you could embed, mindfulness practices and into that. So yeah, because I've got a few friends who are quite young and a couple of nieces and nephews who I just watch how they live their lives through a screen, basically, and they come home, they're quite tense, and their self-soothing mechanism is to go and scroll or watch Netflix. And I was talking to them about meditation, and they're in that position where they're running too hot that they wouldn't even think of going to draw a picture or do some creative thing because they're too kind of agitated and their focus is quite limited. And I just thought, if I could go back in time and redo my life again from that age, if I'd been taught a practice that you know led me quite early into this process of self-development and awareness around focus and health. And instead of slogging my guts out basically to achieve goals that I was looking at, but more looking at that process as a way of developing myself, I'd be in quite a different state of consciousness right now. And so I started piecing together what that would look like. And so, yeah, I've come up with a course that's kind of got 3 modules, which, yeah, they kind of break down the process a bit. So I give a bit of a lead in to basically what we've just been talking about, like ways of cooling yourself down so that you can focus and be in a meditative state and be more focused in everything you do. But that allows you to get into processes like seated meditation, which are amazing for the mind, but are often too challenging when you're in an irritated state. So I kind of lead into that. And so the first module is about introspection, and that process of leading into meditation and grounding a meditation practice. Some of the other units in that are journaling. Like, I found journaling an amazing process, not only with just creativity in building myself on creative journeys, but I find that when I do go into meditative processes, like once I start meditating, at the end of that, a lot of very insightful things come up. And if I just kind of go into my day, I I kind of lose them. They're on the verge of consciousness and unconsciousness. But if I start journaling, you flesh that out and they become real realizations. Yeah, it's basically because I started doing the morning pages. I don't know if you've ever heard the morning.
No, what's the morning pages?
It's, oh, I'm going to forget her name. That the author that wrote the book, The Artist's Way. It was just one process in her development, which you sit down and you just write 3 pages of just stream of consciousness. So you don't try and curate it in any way. You just write every thought that comes into your head. And that's an amazing way to, see what's going on in your head, as well as pulling out some very amazing bits of information that reflect back to yourself. And I found if you meditate first and then you do a stream of consciousness writing like that, yeah, you really get some kernels of some things that you really love in your life that you want to progress with. So there's that, and then there's visualization, ways of overcoming things, ways of, opening up perceptions of greater experiences. And then the next unit is inspiration. So different ways of kind of cultivating excitement in your life. So I think for many people that I speak to who are young creatives, they talk about developing a style, and that process is, people find that a bit of a mystical thing. Like, how do I develop a style? What is a style? I see these people out there who are artists and they've got a very distinct look to their work, and photographers. But for me, I think developing your style it's a process of getting to know yourself and what you really love. So all style is to me is the things that you're really attracted to, everything that you're attracted to, but kind of refined down into a funnel. And at the end, it comes out looking like a style, but it's just like, no, I like that range of colors, those particular shapes, whatever it is. So it's that process of just learning what you love, like going out into the world with this kind of open filter, which just, okay, so what do I love out here? Which I thought photography is a great way of doing that. But even using digital equipment, like using Pinterest, people who, the algorithm that comes in Pinterest that allows, you to sort all your things that you love and filter them down and keep getting more images based on a particular strain of things that you like, is a great way of building mood boards. So there's a part in mood boards. And then, yeah, there's another within that section that also is creating like an artist circle. So like creating a community of creatives that you like talking to about, you're inspired by, what they do, or you just have really healthy conversations around creative process with them. I find that, a great way to fuel, direction in your life, because often when you have these conversations with like-minded people, you get a real insight into yourself as well as them. And then the final piece, the final unit, is around creating a daily practice. Like, obviously you've got to build momentum with these things, and the more that you the more that you can build a habitual practice. So there's a kind of the science behind building habits and how important they are, and little interesting things like stacking habits together so that
it sounds very much like Atomic Habits, James Clear.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot to that, I think, and especially for an artist, and creatives, it's easy to get distracted with 1,000 different ideas. But I think the process of actually sitting down and blocking out time every day for this process, and I think mixing it with things like meditation so that it becomes an enjoyable, relaxing process that you unwind, rather than getting home every day and just going, oh, I've just got to detach from myself by focusing on whatever's on the computer. This process is you connect with yourself and you focus about things that you really want to do in your life. So I didn't want to specifically say that the courses were like, okay, this is for a painter or this is for a photographer. I more wanted to, people will come to the process with a direction of something. They may be a writer, a filmmaker. And I think this process can be used for all of those things. I think, taking time at the end of the day to do something like this which is good for your nervous system, but also good for your well-being, as far as I feel like I'm getting somewhere with something that's really for me. Because I think, you go into creative agencies a lot of the time, and all your energy is totally given to that, and you're not directing that much. It's the clients that come in. I think it's to keep your creative fires burning, you have to have your own projects going outside. And you just don't know where they'll take you. So yeah, the last one is building habits, the importance of intention setting. And the last one, which I can't remember exactly what it is, but that's the basis of the whole unit.
If people wanted to reach out to you in order to know when that course might be available, or to explore mindfulness a little bit more with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, you can go to my personal website, which is Christopher Phillips, with 2 L's and Phillips.art. And you can go to the workshops tab, or it's just /workshops. And at the moment, I've just got like a landing page that's got the brief summary of it. And I'm still testing the courses. So I'm imagining by early February next year, they'll be available. But if anyone's interested and wants to know more information, you can just put in your email if you want to know more. There's a little "if you want to know more" button, and then I can let you know when the dates and prices and more about the course.
Brilliant. Christopher, thank you so much for your time this morning and sharing not only your story and experiences with this, but also some really valuable tips there that people might be able to listen into this and take away, and even start to implement straight away. Really appreciate the time you've taken.
Great. Thanks a lot, Lawrence. I really appreciate it too. Thank you.
No problem. For everyone watching, thanks for your time as well. And no doubt we'll see you in a future podcast. In the meantime, take care.